Hey guys, thanks for joining us here for episode 19 of Cage Side Convos. I'm Rick Huntsman, and we're coming to you live from American Top Team here in Watertown.
And what's good? This is Quince. Good morning, everybody. Today we've got a special guest with us, local published author Derek Shoemaker. Appreciate you joining us, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. Derek, actually, I met him a couple years back. You know, he reached out to me, and he told me that he was writing a book. You know, and I'm like, what do you mean, like a whole book? And he's like, yeah, like a whole book. And you know, and he wanted me to, you know, glance through it, and we sat and chatted about it a couple times, and you know, it always blew my mind because I'm like, you know, I'm a songwriter, right? And so these songs are just a couple pages at that, but you know, you're writing entire novels. You know, so just the level of dedication always stood out to me. But I was hoping to get you to kind of talk about your experience writing your first book, and maybe breaking it down. It's called the Search for Truth in a World of Deception.
Pretty much the basic start to the book is I just wanted to write something that I feel would really be compelling and something that would really get people to think about certain philosophies and certain ideologies of their own life. I wanted it to be a book of meaning.
Mm-hmm.
So I kind of thought about, okay, what can I write about? Like, what will be engaging yet fun for me to write? And of course, I'm like, well, religion's always a hot topic. Like religion
I'd
and
say so.
philosophy. So because I thought about what's the biggest thing that not only connects people, but will also divide people. And it's like a double-edged sword.
Good point. Sure.
So I'm like, well, let's start with probably the most familiar with, you know, and being in the U.S. would be Christianity and the Bible.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought about, you know, what are all the hot points that divide people within that, and what are some of the points that connect people, and where's the disconnect? Like, why is it such a hot button topic? So, so the hardest part was just figuring out what direction you wanted to go. So that's where I kind of made an outline of all the topics I wanted to hit. And then just that process, it took a long time. It took me about 8 years from start to finish to get an idea of where I wanted to go, what direction I wanted to go with the book.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot of revisions like within that too.
Sure.
Where I would read something, I'm like, yeah, I don't know if I really want to include that. And with a topic like religion or philosophy, there's so many branches you could go off it.
Right.
Where I want to be clear and concise on my ideas, but I don't want to go off on tangents.
Right.
You needed to kind of bring it in and bring it in a little bit. So
Right.
it's a lot of trial and error. It's a lot of help from like a couple beta readers that I would reach out to, like, hey guys, I'm gonna send this to you. Let me know if you think that.
Right.
Like, and you want to make sure you don't just hit people. You don't want to just yes, not say, oh yeah, it's great. Nothing wrong. You want constructive criticism. And I think in any creative process, if you can't take that constructive criticism, you're doing yourself a disservice. You got to look in the mirror and be honest and say, hey, you know, this isn't good. It's not good enough. Nah, it's not the direction I want to go.
Right. It's almost like if you can't take that constructive criticism, are you really here for the right reasons?
Yeah.
Are you really doing it for the right reasons? And that's certainly to get better and to find that truth, to get to the truth. But we're talking about 8 years. I think we were just talking about you were doing jiu-jitsu for 8 years. Or maybe was that when you got the blue belt?
6.
6 years, so not even 8 years yet.
Yeah.
So, I mean, the time spent in this, like I said, the dedication is, you know, kind of surreal. Where did you, to research all of this stuff, where did you go for it?
A lot of it just through books that I've already read.
Okay.
So a lot of it is like, you get a little nugget in a book and you're like, oh, wow, that makes a lot of sense. Like if you're ever reading something, you just kind of stop and pause and like, wow, I would really want to expand on that.
Right.
Take a picture and post it on Instagram or something.
And it's like, a lot of it is research online, and that's very tricky to navigate through.
Sure.
Because you want to really check your sources. You can't just believe everything you see online. So,
Well, even that's got to be difficult too, because especially with religious-based doctrines, you start researching, and usually, so for me, I do a lot of my sports medicine research and stuff like that online. So you got to go through 3, 4, 5 different sources, compare them, find the common threads, research the studies, and so it gets to be a very in-depth process pretty quickly. And I mean, you know, sports medicine, if it's older than 5 or 6 years, it typically kind of falls to the wayside. So I have a very limited scope that I'm operating in. But religion is 2,000, 3,000 years old, and it has so many, almost infinite iterations. And so when you start trying to fact check, it almost becomes a farce, even assuming that everything's factual sometimes.
And that's the thing too, and that's kind of like a disclaimer I put in the book, where don't take my word for whatever I say is truth. You gotta like find your own truth, and you gotta kind of go with what you feel is right. So my book doesn't come across as this is the truth and this is, you know, the way it is. I say if you find something that you believe to be more truthful, then go ahead and research that. If you disagree with something I say, then that's good, because if everyone agrees on the same thing, then it's not going to be, typically it's not true. Like, I think investigators will tell you that every day. If there's a crime and 4 witnesses all report the same exact thing, then something's shady for that, because 4 different people are going to experience 4 different views of that crime. Oh, this guy was about 5'7". Oh no, this guy was 6 foot. No, the car was 130 miles an hour. No, the car was 150 miles an hour. So when you kind of look at that lens, any religious doctrine that you see that has discrepancies, if there wasn't discrepancies in those, that would be suspect, just simply because you're having hundreds of translations, you're having different scribes write different things, you have different, like you would have Jewish writers write on one thing, you would have Roman writers, so it's like, there's going to be
It's just different perspectives in general. Yeah.
so you just kind of find the common thread and then just kind of sift through it and say, okay, well, this is what I believe is the most plausible or the most probable, and just kind of go from there.
So kind of find the medium line through all your data points.
Yeah, because you're not going to find a black and white. Okay, this is exactly what happened back 2,000 years ago.
Actually, that makes a lot of sense. I've never heard it put in that context, even as far as crime scene. Like you said, even understanding people's different perceptions, because I mean, you'd be, like you said, people standing at a different vantage point, even something like that, and then like you said, you extrapolate that over 2,000 years, and however many billions of people have read this or put their own spin on it and stuff. Yeah. So it doesn't necessarily make it untrue. It's just kind of murkier.
Yeah. And that's certainly a well-balanced approach. Whether it's to writing a book or to, you know, whatever venture. But I'm sure you still get pushback, even though you are like, these are just my thoughts, this is my research. I'm not saying that this is what it is. I'm sure you still get a lot of pushback as far as people.
I had one person push back. She actually did a review on my book, the one negative review on Amazon. Said it was a white supremacist ideology.
Right.
And I'm like, there's nothing in that book that would even remotely hint at that. I think it stemmed from, I was talking about Albert Pike, who was like the father of Freemasonry.
Okay.
And he's not even included in this book. Like I said, just on my separate author page where I go into Freemasonry a little bit. And she's talking about how my Search for Truth book was white supremacist ideology, just based on a character that I was talking about, a historical figure that's not even tied to this book. So she left a review on my book page saying. So, you know, I commented back respectfully. I'm like, well, feel free to provide any excerpt from the book that leads you to believe this way. Nothing like
Right.
So yeah, I get pushed back to the page.
Yeah, sure.
And I think, you know, that's a good example because, you know, I don't know what her, you don't know what her background is or what led her, given what she's been through, to see it that way.
Sure.
You know, and that's just perspective. That's her perspective at the time, whether it was thought through or not.
I think it's important too, is that to accept criticism. You know, it's something Gary Vee talks about a lot. Is if you're going to be successful, if you're going to do anything that's worthwhile, or if you're going to do anything that you feel convicted and compelled and truly deeply to do, there's going to be some pushback.
Right.
So to be receptive to that, not just assume, okay, well, she said I'm white supremacist, so I better shut this down. So for you, it's asinine. Obviously, that's not true. That's not how you feel and stuff. But to get that pushback, to get a conflicting view, I think tells you that you're on the right path. You know?
Yeah, and it's just funny because a lot of my book talks about like Egyptian theology and Hermeticism, which originates out of Africa. So I'm saying, you got to dig deeper back into this to get the origins. And, I have a a lot of respect for other world religions and other cultures. So I just like to say that. I'm like, that's coming out of nowhere.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do you, heading into something like this, did you have people that you kind of looked up to, that you kind of based your philosophies off of, or motivations off of?
I think a lot of it is just based on different authors that I've read, because I'm an avid reader too.
Right.
So I tried to write my book as if I'm telling a story, even though it's a nonfiction book. Kind of like I'm sitting down with someone and saying and having a dialogue.
Right.
So within the context of my book, I'm like, okay, so let's assume this happens. So if we're assuming, you know, something's the way it is, then why would that lead to that? And I would kind of go from there, kind of snowball from there. So I'm just kind of approaching it as in I'm trying to do like an oral argument for like say litigation or something like that. So like I'm building a case for my book. And in order to build a case, you gotta pretty much know what the defense is gonna come after. So I try to play like devil's advocate. If people are gonna question my basic theory of my book that the Bible's been misinterpreted for certain agendas, then why? Like, what's the reasoning for that? Who's the people behind that? What's the cause for that?
Sure.
And what's the proof of that? So that's where you kind of got to look at it from all angles, and then look at it from angles that not just your side, but the opposite side, because that's the best way to build your argument is to kind of combat.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
And you know, and I think that in part is why, you know, the book is kind of an easy read, because you're not just throwing, you know, it's not just facts, information. You know what I mean? It's already digested, and then it's put back out in a way that kind of saves the reader a bunch of time. You know, having to break down a lot of that stuff themselves.
One thing you touched on a little bit, we were all kind of chatting before we turned the camera on, is so that the kind of the willingness to be wrong. You know, so over the course of 8 years, this book has got to take several manifestations. Your purpose, the path you want to take, and stuff, and all these things are going to be changing, ever changing, and especially as you are researching or you're having people read it, or you're examining your own argument from the other side. There had to have been times where maybe you found that you were able to prove yourself wrong.
Yeah, definitely. So I am in the process of writing a follow-up book to this called The Devil Deception, and it does branch off. The first book focuses on Christianity and the Bible simply because I feel like that's what most people are familiar with, even if they're not avid like churchgoers or if they're not really religious per se. They know the basic core, I think, ideology behind Christianity and what it stands for. So my follow-up book branches off into more Egyptian theology, Judaism, Hinduism is a big portion of it. And as I'm researching further into it, I'm kind of reevaluating my first book, where the basic premise is the same, basic theory is the same, but I'm finding more stuff and more topics that I'm like, okay, well, I didn't really have a great understanding before, and now I do. And a big part of that is Facebook groups that I'm involved in, because you literally can connect with billions of people with different ideas than your own. And just in those groups, there's conversations, there's dialogue, and you might hear something that just kind of triggers something, like in your brain. Like in my first book, I'm like, well, I didn't really understand that topic, so I'm not going to really dive into it. But 8 years later, you're like, okay, I kind of understand it now, and I'm going to reevaluate my thought process on that. Because I think, I actually think it was Muhammad Ali that stated, if you view the world the same as you did 25 years ago, you wasted 25 years of your life.
Sure.
And that quote always rang true to me.
Yeah.
I mean, if you don't change your thought process in 25 years, then are you growing as an individual? Are you growing as a person?
Right.
Really experiencing everything you could, I mean, I think a lot of that just comes down to honesty, too. You know, are you being honest with yourself, or are you truly interpreting the world around you? And I mean, kind of for us as for me as a martial artist, it's that white belt mindset. It's like always learning, always evolving, always trying to grow. And I think what becomes difficult sometimes, especially as we get to a certain point in life, I mean, you hear it all the time. People say, "Oh, I'm stuck in my views. I'm stuck in my ways. I'm stuck in my ways." 40 years old, 50 years old, you're stuck in your ways. why? What's the point of doing anything anymore if you're not willing to be wrong, or challenge yourself, or to let yourself be challenged by others? You know, and I think a lot of times people start seeing that as an attack. You know, especially when it comes to religion. This is not an easy topic, or even sometimes popular topic to talk about. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because with religion, you're not so much attacking, but people may perceive you as attacking their whole belief system on their existence. And that's some heavy stuff to do.
And you know, I think a lot of it comes, and this could be religion or politics or anything that might be handed down through, say, parents or family, or you know, or just a place, you know, the country we were born, or whatever. So I don't think a lot of people really get into it. They don't really dig into it as much. They're just like, well, this is me. This represents me.
Right.
So when they come into contention with someone who says differently, they might not have a lot to fall back on.
You know, it goes back to that old taboo where you don't talk about sex, religion, and politics. You don't talk about it. How is anyone going to have a meaningful conversation with it when it comes up? So I think you got to teach. Like I personally try to teach my kids. You know, I'll talk about it, but I'll also try to instill in them. Listen, like everyone's going to have a different opinion. You just have to be receptive to that. And if you reach, you know, pushback from someone, you're not going to be able to engage with someone who has zero interest. I mean, you don't want to waste, and it goes back to energy. You don't want to waste your energy commenting your views. You see it on Facebook all the time, where people are just going back and forth. So, you know, it came to a point where I fell into that trap too, where I'm like, well, let me give you the reasons why I feel like you're wrong. And if they're not going to change, then you're just wasting your energy. So you're better off to engage with people who reinforce and you know, build up your energy. At the same time, you might have that middle ground people that are like, okay, well, explain more to me what you talked about. You know, you got those people that want to grow and are receptive. So you have two different ends of the spectrum. So it's kind of a balancing act on how far do you want to extend yourself emotionally and energy-wise.
I think the biggest thing is when you enter into a conversation, and I do this with myself a lot, and it's really changed the way that I approach people that have different opinions than me. Is when you enter a conversation, you ask yourself, are you willing to be proven wrong? Like, is there a possibility, even if it's a 1%, 0.5% chance that they say something that's going to change my mind? Is there a chance that this person, that I deplore all their values, I think they've got their head shoved up their ass, but is there something they could possibly say to prove me wrong and convince me to change my opinion? If there's a 0% chance that I'm going to have my opinion changed, there's no sense in having a conversation at all. You know, because it immediately shuts you down. You know?
Yeah, I mean, it just, like we talked about before, the importance of purposeful conflict. And really, you know, why are people there? Are they really there? Are they there to learn, or are they there to just impinge, you know, on other people's, like you said, energy? Because some people really are only there for that contention, and that's how they pull that energy from. They don't want to learn anything new. You know, they just want to get people riled up, but they just want to impose their beliefs on others.
It's funny, I actually had one guy comment on my Facebook page about my book. He was another guy that had a lot of pushback, thought he was right 100% of the time, and he commented something, I forgot what the post was, it was in relation to my book. So he said something like, oh, you don't want to read this author, he's a fake, he's a, you know, blah, blah, blah. And then right after that, two people commented, hey, where can I get your book?
That's
so
awesome.
it's kind of like, well, thanks man for the free publicity. So, I mean, like we touched on before, you're going to get that in any field you do. You're going to have people that, it's cliche, but they hate themselves and they hate where they're at in their own life, so they're going to try to bring you down. And you just got to steer clear of that. I mean, you just got to, it's cliche, but you got to build your circle small. It's about, you know, quality over quantity. And you feed off people's energy. So if you're constantly around people who are depressed or down or always saying something negative, you're like, hey, I'm going to go hit the gym today. And you're like, oh, why are you wasting your time? Or I'm like, hey, I'm going to go write something today. You're like, oh, well, why are you wasting your time? You're not, you know, your time's best-selling author or whatever like that. You just gotta, you pretty much gotta do what makes you happy. And then just kind of shut off the outside noise. And that goes back to like my writing process I think you touched on earlier, where I think you have to have like a space where you can go, and just kind of create your own environment where you can be in that creative mode. A lot of times I did work 9 get home at 1:30, 2 o'clock in the morning, my family's sleeping. So, you know, between 2 a.m., 4 a.m., you know, it's quiet, everything's quiet. I'm in my office area that I have set up, and I just write or read or research and stuff like that. So,
And it certainly has to do with being very efficient with your time, the time that you do have. Because I mean, I know you have a family, you know, to support, and so you've got to pick up jobs. I'm sure you're not a millionaire yet from the book, right? But you know, balancing and finding that quality time, you gotta pick quality time.
yeah, and that is a tricky part because I work 2 jobs. Like I work full-time job. I work my manager at Target, and then I'm still at Stewart's part-time. I worked there for about 8 years. So it's actually once I stepped down from running stores, is when I had more time to allow me to read a book. So once I stepped down to an assistant manager position, I had more time. So that goes back to the mental health well-being too, because I have less stress.
Yeah.
So once you make like huge life changes, like I took a pay cut to be with my family more, to have less stress in my life.
Right.
So it's that balancing act again. Like, obviously, everyone needs money to survive. We need to support families. We need to do what we need to do. But you have to really evaluate. Okay, am I going to be happier if I take this? And I know a lot of people are probably in the same position.
Yeah, it's that longevity mindset by the sound.
Yeah, for sure.
And you know, and have you noticed this? This is something that we've talked about before. But once you kind of find that purpose, and you start changing around your life in this way, like I've worked a whole bunch of jobs that I might not enjoy, but I find the reason that I'm there.
Yeah.
And I almost enjoy being there. I enjoy that it helps me get to that next step.
Yeah, you have to kind of step outside yourself and
Yes.
view it from that perspective.
Absolutely.
Like I wasn't, when I worked at Stewart's, like the stock they have in the company is pretty much what I'm going to build my retirement on.
Right.
So even though I didn't necessarily want to be there, and that's why I changed jobs, I think in September, my 8 years there helped me build my retirement. So now looking back on it, that's not time wasted, even though I didn't enjoy it.
Right.
And that's where you gotta always have that in the back of your mind.
Absolutely.
What's the process like? Why am I going through this right now? And if you know the reasons why you're doing it, then like you said, you kind of enjoy it more. You're like, okay,
Yes.
well, I'm doing this because I'm working towards this goal.
Absolutely.
I think what happens too is even if you know, so you know maybe for in your case, you know you're working at Stewart's, you don't necessarily enjoy it, but you know, okay, I'm doing this for long term, I build my retirement, whatever. At a certain point, I think that end justification doesn't outweigh what you're currently going through.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I think that's what really elicits that change.
Yeah.
You know, which I had a similar experience. I was working at the cheese plant there in Adams, and I was making good money, but I was working overnights. I was miserable. I couldn't focus on the gym. A lot of my life was suffering, certainly outside. And I mean, for me, it was much more short-lived than 8 years. You know, it was, I don't think 14 months before I just went in one morning and I told them I quit. I was like, this is my 2 weeks. I'm out. Because what I was trying to accomplish financially, physically, through being at that job was just not worth the struggle. And I didn't have any purpose. I wasn't doing anything in my life. And I think once you hit that point, and when you truly feel that calling and that draw of purpose, I think that's what really forces you to say, okay, can I take this anymore, or do I need to make this change?
I think that's the biggest thing too, is some people may be afraid of that change.
Oh,
Like you said, hey, I'm making
absolutely.
great money, it's a job, I'm supporting my family. But you can support your family a number of ways. You can find different jobs that you can make just as much compensation with. You got to take that risk sometimes.
Yes.
And I think it's got to be a well-informed risk. Like you got to weigh out the pros and cons. You really got to look at it. But I think a lot of people watching this will be feeling the same position. Like, hey, it's okay, it's not horrible, but I want to do that.
Right.
You got to take that risk and chance. I think if you want to achieve your ultimate goals.
Absolutely.
And I think for a lot of people, especially those who go right from high school to college and maybe take on the burden of all those student loans, and now you go and you have a degree and you have these loans, and so you got to jump right in the workforce before you have time to sit and be like, damn, where do I actually want to be?
Yeah.
And now you can't necessarily just get out of that career
Right.
with all that money that you got. It's kind of handcuffing you to that. So, you know, certainly I think there's a lot of fear financially and how it all might work out.
That's one thing I try to preach to my kids. My kids are young; they're 13 and 11, so they're not on that college doorstep yet. But in 4 or 5 years, they're going to start thinking about that. So I try to explain to them, college is a great opportunity. It can open doors, but it's what you make of it. You're not guaranteed a job right out of college. You're not guaranteed to be handed, you know, $100,000 a year job. And with anything in life, I mean, you gotta think about it. And I think that's one thing I really try to instill. Your thought process will, if you're constantly thinking about things, your life tends to take you in the direction where you need to go. If you're just going through the motions and say, well, you know, the school system says if I go to college and, you know, I'll be good. You know, it's not. I
So
think
being
everyone,
externally driven as opposed to internally driven.
exactly. And just breaking away the old stigma that if you have to go to college to be successful.
Right.
There's plenty of people that I know. I mean, I know a couple of friends that go to trade schools. They're working 6 months, making twice as much money with zero debt. So it's all about learning how to be fiscally responsible and understanding how money works.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think that's one thing our school systems they don't teach you how money works. And I think, and people say, well, the rich people are just greedy and, you know, blah, 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 blah. One thing that they don't step back and look at is that rich families teach their kids how to manage money. They teach them how to manage their wealth.
Right, sure.
Granted, it's a lot easier when you're born with that stability.
Right.
But there's plenty of people too who have worked their way up and just realized, hey, well, if I would have done this 15, 20 years ago, I think that's one thing is habits too. Like a lot of habits are learned from their parents. And one book I did read was called Rich Dad, Poor Dad. I don't know if you guys heard of that.
I've heard of it.
Robert, I can't think of his last name, but he writes a lot of like self-help motivation books like that. And he just pretty much had 2 dads with 2 different mindsets, and he kind of incorporated in his book what he learned from each dad. And then looking back on him, you could see why one dad was successful financially, and another dad wasn't. And it boiled down to mindset. I think what he kind of had.
Well, and you know, that's the thing too, is exploring that. Like, you know, what's your definition of rich? What do you need? What physically do you need in your life to be happy? And a lot of times you hear people say, you know, money doesn't make you happy. You know, and a lot of times people with money are miserable in there, and you know, for that cliche of, you know, rich kids being on drugs and blowing money in cars and DUIs and stuff like that. And I think the common thread is whether financially, whether you're vastly wealthy or if you're technically poor, it comes down to this idea of purpose. You know, and when you feel like you have a sense of purpose, you can make the little bit of money you have work for you, because you don't need a big TV, you don't need a big house, you don't need whatever kind of car. You can be happy with these material things, and I think it makes it easier to save money too. You know, because you're not out, like you're not driven to buy all these things. You don't feel the stress of that financial burden. You know, because you have a kind of external, or, you know, an internal sense of purpose, and you're operating in such a way that, okay, well, I don't have to buy this. I can save this money. I can put it towards a bigger long-term goal. You know what I mean? And I think it makes it a bit easier to kind of accrue a fair amount of, you know, personal wealth and well-being with that sense of purpose. You know, and then people who are rich and are happy are, again, I don't think are the people that are just blowing their money on random shit. They're acting purposefully, and they're working with charities, and they're doing things that are benefiting humanity, and all the while accruing this increased amount of wealth. What's her name? Author of the Harry Potter books, Rowling.
Yeah.
J.K. Rowling. Yeah. She seems to be, you know, one of those people that's very purposeful, and that's very acts with intent with her money and stuff. And it was a post I read the article I read the other day about her losing her billionaire status, you know, giving away this money and stuff. And I think she's a person, if I had to speculate, who's defined her purpose a little bit and is okay with not having that status.
Right.
You know, whereas the people that are hell bent on maintaining that billionaire status are probably not happy, content people.
Is she I didn't know she had the billionaire status, but is she also the same author that was however many years before those books started coming out? What was she, like, on drugs or
I think
homeless
she
or
was
something?
homeless.
Yeah,
I think that was
You know, so imagine having both perspectives, you know,
Right,
just
right.
both ends of the spectrum.
Right.
So it's almost not surprising that she's like, look, I survived not having money.
Sure.
You know, what do I need all of this for?
But I mean, you look at it and you see, so you see a lot of times professional athletes, right? So kids that grow up in bad neighborhoods and are poor, you know, economically depressed and stuff, they make it big, and all of a sudden they're spending all this money on this lavish shit, right? Then they end their career and then they're broke again,
Right.
you know? So I think the common thread, if we investigate a little bit deeper, would be more purpose-based. You know, what's your mindset? Like you were saying, when you're growing up poor, are you telling yourself, well, I'm poor right now. If I have this car, if I have this house, if I have this, if I have that, then I'll be happy. As opposed to, if I get to a position of wealth, if I can make a difference, you know, then I'll be happy. Then all of a sudden, you get to that point, you still don't care about the money.
Right.
That goes back to what you said when you're younger. Like if say you're a 7-year-old kid, and then you go here and your parents are considered poor or in the lower class, and you said, hey, can we have that? And your parents were like, no, we can't afford that. We don't have the money. And if you're constantly hearing that throughout your whole childhood, you're going to grow up thinking you can't afford things. You're going to grow up thinking, no, I can't do that. But if your parents say, well, maybe let's save up and maybe we can work a little bit harder and we can get that. And set a goal like, how do we get that?
Right.
Instead of saying, no, we can't.
Right.
So I think language is a huge part of development.
For sure. Well, I think that kind of goes back to your point of teaching kids to kind of manage finances. You know, I know something my mom always did for us was if we wanted something, she'd say, okay, well, you know, I don't have that money right now. If we want that, this is what we have to do. These are the steps we have to take. And we have, like you said, we have to work a little bit harder. We have to set aside money. We have to prioritize that if we want it. And these are the sacrifices we have to make that happen. You know?
That goes with another thing. There's a lot of people who say, oh, you're lucky. And they confuse luck with hard work.
Yeah.
They don't
big
see
time.
you working nights. They don't see you working weekends. They don't see you working holidays.
For sure.
They don't see you working when all your friends are out at the bar or whatever. That's not to say that there's not a time to let loose and have fun and be compressed. But a lot of times people, they see the result, they don't see the process.
For sure.
Right. I think I don't know who said it, but they said, oh, just imagine the harder I work, the luckier I get.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it was Edison or something like
Was
that.
it?
It was some guy who did.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that guy did a whole bunch of stuff. But I mean, it's so true though. I mean, so for like in your case, writing a book, that's a really cool thing. My youngest brother and I, we talk a lot. He's tried his hand at publishing a book, and I write periodically here and there, but I've never prioritized it for a prolonged extent to be successful. And I can't imagine having the audacity to tell you that you're lucky you published a book,
Right.
especially after knowing you. So that's
Right.
8 years. Like you said, between 2 and 4 a.m. Maybe that's all you have for long stretches of time. You're trying to balance everything out. That's not luck, man. That's goddamn hard work.
And a
Yeah,
lot
it's
of it
dedication.
too is like when I'm, people talk about being in the zone when you're mentally focused on something. I mean,
Yeah.
it's hard. It takes a toll on your family too.
Yeah,
Like,
it's-
I gotta give a lot of respect to my family, like
Sure.
my fiance and my kids. Dad's in his office writing, so try not to bother.
Yeah.
And sometimes it'll be, I'll get a little bit grumpy, like just let me finish this stuff. Like,
Yeah.
So it comes back to balance too.
Right,
Where,
right.
you gotta balance that.
So do you think as far as purpose goes, do you find that your purpose is the content of the book,
Yeah.
or do you think
Yeah,
it's just
100%.
writing itself?
Well, for me, like personally, that's the way I express myself. I
Okay.
express myself through writing. I love to write, and then also content. I want to reach as many people as I can. Because money's not driven it at all. Because I've actually I self-published, so I never submitted my work to a publisher and said, hey, let's get this into a Walmart or let's get this into Barnes and Noble. I do it strictly through Amazon and self-publishing. I did do the reading room in the mall to support local business.
Yep.
But other than that, I have a job. I have a career. I'm not looking to be an author to make money. But I think that helps me in my writing process because I don't have deadlines. I don't have publishers saying, oh, you can't say that. It's too many people off. I write for people who are kind of in the same boat I am, like looking for questions.
money just as a musician. I can think of numerous major artists who have burnt themselves out because once you sign to that label and they don't care anything about the process or where it comes from. They just want the product. And people burn themselves out and they start hating their work. What they used to love and what helped them to communicate themselves to the world, they now hate, they now resent.
That's why I never really wanted to get into that where I didn't want to have to write full time to support a family. It just takes the joy out of it. Kind of like
Right.
I like playing poker, and I can't imagine playing poker professionally where you have to grind it out. You have to be like a robot and just play the same way with no emotion.
Sure.
So I kind of watched that growing up, during the big poker boom.
Oh, yeah.
Where everybody was playing it. And, a lot of people say they won't turn pro just because they don't want to take the fun out of it. That's kind of like the same way, as you said, with being an artist, writing music, an author. Sometimes you just gotta. Sometimes the highest level that the public sees, like a professional athlete or published author, sometimes that's not the level that you want to be.
Yeah.
Depends on your personal goal.
Absolutely. I mean, I've had people ask me ever since I first fought MMA 4 years ago. Are you gonna go pro? Are you gonna go pro? Fuck no. No way. It's so much work. It's so much work, man, and it's not fun. Even if I fight, I do a 6-week fight camp. That 6 weeks isn't fun. I can't imagine that being my whole life. That I don't want that. So I can absolutely understand, finding that level of fulfillment.
Yeah.
Sure.
Which kind of to get your spin on this. So understanding the difference kind of between passion and person, or passion and purpose, and unifying them to find fulfillment. Right? So the way I've heard it defined, that's really stuck with me is passion is for us, purpose is for others.
Yeah.
Right? So kind of the way I'm interpreting things, and I'd love to hear, obviously you explain this for yourself, but the way I interpret it is you feel very passionate about writing, you love to do it, and then your purpose behind publishing the book is to reach others or to help others.
Yeah.
And kind of help them kind of find their way. And so you're able to unify these things. And I think from the sounds of it, you found something that you feel is very fulfilling.
Yeah, exactly. And I find more fulfillment in, like I said, I get excited when I sell a book.
Sure.
But it's more fulfilling to know, hey, I sold a book in India today, or I sold a book in Africa, or I sold a book in Great Britain. I'm like, what I'm writing and expressing is literally reaching around the world. So for me, for someone to message me like, hey, I read your book and I really loved it. I can't wait for you to write another one. Or hey, you opened up my eyes in this regard. That's what's really fulfilling for me, because that it feels like my purpose is being fulfilled.
Yeah.
So it's awesome to hear to get that feedback.
That is awesome. That's very cool. It's awesome.
And like as an amateur writer, you always have your self doubts.
Sure.
So you're like, well, I haven't sold a book in a while. Like maybe people are turned off from it now, and then you could go. I've gone like a month without selling a book. So that's where you're like, okay, maybe I hit that peak of interest, and then all of a sudden out of the blue, someone messages you and say, hey man, I love it.
Yeah.
So it's you kind of got to stay focused, even though you're gonna have self doubt.
It's definitely just part of the process.
Something you've talked about before, Quince, just this was a couple months ago, but letting it work when you sleep. And I think it's, we were talking about something we had released on social media, maybe early on, kind of the Cage-Side Convos development. I had an interaction, I woke up to an interaction with somebody that was really positive, and you said something like it's working while you're sleeping. So it's out there. And the more we anticipate it, the more we fixate on it, the more we let ourselves be anxious about it, we're almost restricting its ability to grow, because once we put something purposeful out there, it's its own being.
Right.
So your book is out there, it's living, it's breathing now, and it's causing the change and stuff, and just kind of relaxing and letting it happen. Like you said, a month goes by and you're like, you forget that it's, right. And then something like that happens to revitalize us and remind us, like, okay, all right, yeah, we're on the right path. Like,
Yes,
this is,
yes.
you know, there is still fulfillment to be had in this.
And you know, and if it happens enough times, you find yourself being able to pull yourself out of that lag
Yeah.
quicker.
For
And
sure.
you don't necessarily need the reassurance. I mean, it always feels good.
Yeah.
But sometimes when you feel like there's a deficit of assurance, you know, it slows you down a little bit.
Sure.
But you know, positive interaction after positive interaction, and you're able to kind of look at the future more instead of continually looking at the past. Like, oh, this song or this book that I put out, are people still listening to it? Because essentially, there's always a new reader. There's always a new listener that's out there that you know you don't have control over when they're going to come across it.
Right.
But you know, to be able to stay focused on the now and on the future, you know, I think it's the important part.
And we'll start trusting in that process.
Trust in the process.
And also to like go along with it, the more you focus on something, it seems to manifest more in your life. So if you're down in that, you know, I guess lull of like, okay, you're free to process where you're kind of, you know, I have like a roadblock and you don't know where to go, and you're like, okay, well, I don't know, you know, it just doesn't seem to be clicking right now. If you just get more, immerse yourself into the creative process, like start reading more of the material that you want to do, or start watching videos and stuff.
So the work itself brings motivation.
Yeah.
And that's something we've talked about quite often, because it's easy to lose motivation because there are other factors in life other than just, you know, being an artist or being creative or you know, fighting or martial arts. You have other things that go on, and sometimes that shit sucks. You know, life sucks sometimes. But how you get back into the swing of things, and it's the work. Get back into that work that you know and trust, and just watch it, you know, start booming again.
Another big thing too that I'm trying to focus on more is just overall your health, your well-being. Because more studies I'm reading is just about your diet, and a lot of people don't realize how much your gut is connected to your brain.
Yes.
There's been more studies where like the serotonin, and because we talk about depression, I know some people that have depression, and I'm like, well, what's their diet like? You know, like, are they trying to, like, not everything is cured with a pill. Some people may be clinically depressed, or they might need an extra amount, like, are you eating fast food every day? Or are you drinking Mountain Dew 5 times a day?
Sure.
Like, are you
Exercising.
helping yourself?
Yeah,
You're
sure.
helping yourself get out of that. And first thing is relatively simple things. You get sleep when you cut out all the sugar, like as much as you can.
Yeah, it's huge. And I mean, a couple months ago, Quince and I did some episodes on stoicism, and so the month preceding that, we researched and studied a lot and stuff. And man, you go back 3,000 years to when philosophy really started, and you look at guys like, you know, Aristotle, Plato, and stuff like that. I mean, the very first thing they talk about is diet and physical activity. And so one of the things that book I just started reading, it's almost like each generation has to recreate its own philosophy because we forget these things, right? But the same thing come back up, you know, and it's important. Diet, physical activity is very, very important, you know, especially the easier life gets, the easier it is for us to fall into and accept kind of optional things like being sad or being anxious and stuff like that.
Right.
And again, like you said, it's sometimes very clinical, very serious.
And that's where I think it's purposeful too. I think for means of control, you can control a population a lot easier if they're anxious or if they're depressed.
Sure.
And like you said, it's like every generation has to relearn it, but then you have marketing and big companies pushing it. Like,
Preventing us from relearning.
like you said, you listen to some of the, like the philosophers and like Pythagoras. Everyone knows about the Pythagorean theorem, the A squared, the B squared, but they don't learn all the other stuff that you talk about. They learn just about the mathematics. They don't learn about like the way of life.
Yeah.
You know, pretty much how to get your mind right.
Yeah.
Right.
You know?
Because for me, like, I want to be the best artist that I can be, you know, creatively, and to be able to do that for a long time, it is back to health. You know, it's like, you know, once I found that purpose, it changed how I looked at all aspects of life that made me. So it is diet, it is exercise, it is the company that I keep and the conversations that I have and the books that I read. And all of these things I wanted to, like, I couldn't wait to do. I couldn't wake up in the morning and try and be better at all of those things than I was the day before. And it all came from having that purpose, you know?
Well, that's that notion of personal enrichment. So one, like probably something I've been fixating on a lot lately is every single day is do at least one thing that enriches who I am as a person. Because I want to get better, because I know if I'm better, then I can serve my purpose better, so I can help others better. You know, and so again, starting with basic things: diet, exercising. Am I active? Am I learning? Did I learn something today? Did I do something that did I play guitar, or did I practice martial arts? Did I read, or did I listen to something today? Did I have a good conversation? All these things that add up to any various manifestation of personal enrichment, that constant growth, that constant desire to get better, and ultimately be able to serve a more meaningful purpose.
And I think that's where you have to be selfish at some time, because you have to take care of yourself before you can take care of anybody else.
Yes.
Right.
And certain people are like, well, I gotta take care of my kids, or I gotta take care of my spouse, which is 100% true.
Yes.
But if you're miserable inside, they're gonna feed off that, and they're gonna see that. So sometimes it's okay to be selfish and say, hey, I'm gonna take 10 minutes to myself, I'm gonna take an hour to myself.
Yeah.
And I think some people have lost focus of that,
Right.
where they feel selfish by doing it. But it's kind of like if a plane's going down, you put on your oxygen mask first, because you're not gonna help anybody else. So,
Right.
yes.
Right. Did you read that book, The Virtue of Selfishness by Ayn Rand?
No.
Oh, okay. I don't know if that's where you were pulling it from, but that's something that we had talked about before, and it's something that I had struggled with, because they're like, oh, if you're quick to, help somebody out before you help yourself out, it has to do with how you see yourself, how you view yourself, and self-esteem and things like that. But essentially, it's about breaking it down. It's about you can't really give energy that you don't have, or else you're going to plummet and you're going to crash.
Yeah, and the more energy that you can give off, if you're building yourself up to the best person you can be,
Yep.
you're gonna end up helping more people in the long run. Just 'cause the
Absolutely.
people, I mean, I'm sure everyone knows people like this in their life, where they walk in the room and they're like a magnet. Like people just say, holy crap, I want to be around that person. I want to, hang out with that person, just because of the energy that they're bringing into the room. And like vice versa, you have another person that comes in the room like, oh crap.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
I'm going to hear about their problems for the next 2 hours.
Sure.
So,
Yeah. Sure.
and that's where you try to see if you can help that person,
Right.
And it's all about, like, everything is balanced. I think that's the key. That's where
For sure.
you just have to find that balance, and you know how to know when to push and when to, like, just let it go.
Yeah, no, for sure. We were talking about some of the processes in dealing with people like that are first and foremost, you have to be self-aware and mindful and make sure you're not one of those people.
Yeah.
So, keep your own balance, and in doing so, it helps you recognize, how the approach of other people, in regards to, oh, they're the woe is me type, they're just gonna complain, or, it helps you recognize other people as they come, because essentially everything that we're looking for is to keep that balance throughout the day.
Or when someone talks shit about your book, are they doing that just to say something negative, or are they offering you a genuine and sincere criticism? Do they want to help you grow?
Yeah.
Do they want to help you understand their point of view, or are they just, oh, you're white supremacist?
Right.
You're white supremacist, it's definitely very important to understand ourselves, and so we can understand others, where they're coming from, and how to strike that balance, definitely.
Do you have any sort of, before we start wrapping it up, do you have any sort of personal philosophies as far as the process goes?
Yeah, like one philosophy I have as far as like worrying and stuff like that. If it's not going to affect you 1 year from now, don't spend 1 minute worrying about it. And I think a lot of people worry way too much. And by worrying, you're attracting that negative energy. It's kind of like the law of manifestation through like the law of attraction, where if someone cuts you off on the road, are you going to sit there and stew about it for the next hour?
Right.
Because you receive what you put out in the universe. And I think, and a lot of people think that it sounds like new agey and stuff like that, but if you look at any major Eastern ideology, even within the tenets of Christianity, so the doctrines, attributed to Jesus, and like Buddha and Krishna and all those figures. It's all about you put out or you get what you put out. So it's just learning to let go. Detachment's a huge tenet in like Eastern ideology.
Well, that's a big Stoic tenet too. Seneca was attributed to saying, in order to be harmed, you have to believe you've been harmed.
Yeah.
It's like you said, the idea of somebody cutting you off the trap, did they hurt you? Did they affect my ability to be the person I want to be? Or, can I let it go?
Right. And some people, I think, when people hear detachment, they think emotional detachment. That's not necessarily the case. You want to be detached from the outcome. So if you work hard and say, okay, I'm going to put in, a week's worth of work for this tournament coming up or whatever, and then say you get third place. If you know that you put in all the work, then you got to detach yourself from that outcome and just trust the process. Because eventually, kind of like in poker, if you make all the right moves statistically, eventually you're going to, in the long run, be where you need to be, monetary. So it's detachment from the outcome, and you'll be happier. And that's where I think when people like the Stoic monks and stuff like that, they're like, well, their detachment, how can they have a joyful life? I think we have the wrong idea of what detachment means in that sense.
Absolutely. Yeah, because that Stoic philosophy, it's not that you don't have emotions. It's you feel, you honor the emotions, but like you said, it's the outcome. It's that the metaphor of the archer. Right? Once you let go of your bow, once that arrow is fired, the rest isn't your problem. The rest isn't your concern. You do everything to the best of your ability. You're detached from the outcome.
And that's a lot of in my upcoming book, I'm gonna Vivita is something that I've read through, and that has a lot of like that Stoic philosophy in it. And Hinduism has a lot of that, and that's where it ties into Christianity, because you see a lot of talk about like energy within the body, and that's what the search for truth in the world of deception kind of goes into. How a lot of it's allegory within the writings of the scripture about like the seven churches being like seven main chakras in the body. So a lot of it goes right back to your body and energy and how to release that energy and how to harness it.
That's awesome. Do you have kind of time frame on your next book, or you just kind of going with the flow right now?
I'm hoping next year, because a lot of it has, I have a Facebook author page by the same name on the title, The Search for Truth and World Deception. And a lot of my posts on there is material that's going to be in my next book, so a lot of it I've already researched, and that's the hardest part about it, is just researching it and actually writing it to the point where I can kind of make it one cohesive book. So a lot of it is already written, it's just a matter of editing, proofreading, sending it out to other people to try to get their feedback. And,
One thing I heard that really it's very had a very big influence on my coaching style and stuff, but it's this notion that if you don't understand something well enough to explain it simply, you don't understand it. And so it sounds like a lot of what your process is involved in is understanding all these complex thoughts and these in-depth religions, all this vast array of information, but digesting it and being able to put it out simply and directly.
And I think that's one of my strong points of my page and of my books, where I read all the time. I read a variety of information. So I'm not sitting here saying I know all the religions and I know all the truths of the religions. But what I do think my strong point is I see a lot of the religions and I see a lot of the parallels, because I do go across the board when I'm trying to study them. So someone who just studies Hinduism, or someone who just studies Buddhism, or someone who just studies Christianity may not be open to the parallels, because they simply aren't aware of them. And that's one thing that I think my books do, is that they're connecting the dots, so to speak, to show how everything's connected.
That's awesome.
That's fantastic. Guys, The Search for Truth in a World of Deception. Derek, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Man, it was great. It was great. Super interesting. Thank you guys for tuning in once again. What was this? This was 19?
Yeah, episode 19.
Yeah.
Going strong.
Gonna hit the big 2-0 next week, but
And we'll make sure in the comments and stuff, we're gonna find some links for your books and everything, put them in there. Guys, look it up. Go to his page, read what he has to say. If you enjoyed the conversation and stuff, actually, even if you didn't enjoy the conversation, go to his page, talk a little bit of shit, get him talking there. And the name of the next book.
The The Devil Deception.
The Devil Deception.
Yep.
Cool, very cool. And I'm pretty excited to see what that holds, and I'm very interested. I think I'm gonna have to pick up the first one, give it a good thorough look through for sure. Yeah, Derek, thank you so much for
Thank
joining
you.
us. Yeah.
Awesome.
Awesome. Thank you guys for joining in, and we'll see you next week.
Peace.